Wonder what excuse that won't win trophies. This Arsenal team have what it takes to get over the line.
We've done it. We are in a Champions League final for the first time in 20 years.
This Arsenal team is starting to look dangerous again, and that should terrify the rest of Europe. Because this is no longer the Arsenal side that used to collapse the moment injuries arrived or pressure increased. This is now a team sitting top of the Premier League with just 3 games left. A team that survived months without Bukayo Saka at full fitness, Ødegaard absences, timber injuries, fatigue, criticism and cup disappointments, and still found a way to reach a Champions League final for the first time since 2006.
Next stop, Budapest. Arsenal through to their first Champions League final.
And the scary part, they may actually be stronger now than when the season started. Mikel Arteta quietly changed the structure of the team. Myles Lewis-Skelly completely changed the midfield dynamics. Declan Rice started controlling games differently. Saka returned at the perfect time with goals against Fulham in Atlético Madrid. Gabriel exploded into form, and suddenly Arsenal stopped looking emotional and started looking experienced. This is a team with one of the best defensive records in Europe, a team that broke Premier League set-piece records, a team many fans mocked for only scoring from corners, yet somehow they are now one step away from the Premier League title and 1 game away from becoming champions of Europe. And that is what makes this story fascinating, because whether people admit it or not, football is starting to say something very uncomfortable about Arsenal again. This is why Arsenal suddenly look like one of the most complete teams in world football. Arsenal didn't ease into this season, they came at it. From the jump, this wasn't a team trying to prove something, this was a team that had already figured out what it was becoming. The football had weight, the defending had authority, the midfield had control, and for long stretches, Arsenal weren't just winning games, they were making serious opponents look like they were playing 1 step behind in a dance they didn't know the steps to. The first real statement came August 23rd at the Emirates, Leeds 5-0. But forget the scoreline for a second, the message was the thing. Timber scored twice, Gyökeres got his first Arsenal goals, Saka scored before going off injured, and even with the injury concern looming, what stood out was that the goals were coming from everywhere. Centre-back movement, wide combinations, striker power, set pieces, academy energy, no single player carrying the thing. The system was swallowing the game whole. Then September 13th, Nottingham Forest 3-0. And this one might have been the clearest early picture of what Arteta had actually been building. Zubimendi scored twice, Gyökeres scored again, and the midfield balance was something else. Rice could patrol, Ødegaard could connect, Zubimendi could dictate. Arsenal weren't rushing attacks anymore, they were suffocating teams, slowly turning the oxygen down until the spaces appeared by themselves. That's what made the start so convincing. This wasn't just a high-energy press and run team anymore. Arsenal had become a control team. Saliba and Gabriel gave them the nerve to hold a high line without sweating. Rice was the shield, Ødegaard was the rhythm, Saka was the escape route. And with Gyökeres, Martinelli, Trossard, Madueke, Timber, Havertz cycling through, Arsenal suddenly had 5 or 6 different ways to hurt you. On Champions League campaign opened with a 2-0 away win at Athletic Club, Martinelli and Trossard of the bench to decide it. That detail matters. Arsenal didn't need the perfect 11 players to go to a loud Basque atmosphere and handle business. They could change the game from the bench. That's a different kind of team. Beat Olympiacos 2-0 next. Martinelli early, Saka late, clean sheet. 2 games, 2 wins, 4 goals, 0 conceded. Rhythm without mercy. Then Atlético Madrid. Arsenal beat Simeone's side 4-0 on October 21. Gabriel, Martinelli and Gyökeres with a brace. 4 goals in a second half burst against Atletico. That's not something that happens. Atletico teams are designed to make you impatient, drag you into ugly territory, and punish the moment your emotions take over. Arsenal did the exact opposite, stayed patient, turned the screw slowly, then broke them apart completely. Simeone must have been watching from the touchline like, how? And then Bayern Munich came to London, 18 unbeaten. Arsenal beat them 3-1. Timber scored, Bayern pulled one back, then Madueke and Martinelli put it to bed. At that point, this wasn't just Premier League ambition anymore, this was European authority. The identity was impossible to miss by then. Arsenal could press high, defend deep, score from corners, create from wide, attack through Gyökeres, and bring players off the bench without losing a drop of intensity. This didn't look like the Arsenal people had been waiting to crack. This looked like a matured title machine with no obvious off switch. But football seasons don't stay clean. The first crack wasn't tactical, it was physical. Saka's injury mattered in a very specific way. When he's on the pitch, Arsenal don't just have a right winger, they have an escape route, a ball carrier, a chance creator. A player who can turn a slow, flat possession into a penalty box situation in 3 touches. Ødegaard's absences hurt differently. Without him, Arsenal lose the tiny pauses that make the whole attack breathe. The disguised angle, the first-time pass in behind, the late arrival into the box. And then it spread. Timber, Calafiori, Gabriel, Saliba, Zubamendi carrying fatigue. By March and April, the question wasn't who's missing, the question was who isn't. Arteta's situation got so extreme that 11 Arsenal players withdrew from international duty at once, which predictably brought criticism and side eyes from everywhere until he had to publicly defend the club's medical decisions. Imagine having to do that. Mad season.
And when rhythm disappears, narratives fill the gap. The loudest one was straightforward. Arsenal only score from set pieces. It wasn't invented from nothing. Arsenal were genuinely terrifying from corners all season. They broke the Premier League record for most corner goals in a single campaign, reaching 17. And when the injury crisis bit hardest, the open play combinations dried up. Games became tighter, more stop-start, more dependent on delivery, second balls, and defensive solidity to grind results out. The thing is, set pieces weren't a weakness, they were a weapon. The problem was that during the worst of the injuries, the weapon started to look like the whole attack, and that's a different thing. The results started to hurt too. Lost the Carabao Cup final 2-0 to City, out of the FA Cup, Southampton of all teams, 2-1 in the quarter-final. Then in the league, the 2-1 defeat to Bournemouth in April, which Arteta himself called a big punch in the face. When a manager says that, you know it landed different. For the first time all season, Arsenal looked vulnerable. Not broken, not out of it, vulnerable. The same team that had been dismantling Europe was suddenly having to negotiate every single game. Every injury carried more weight. Every missed chance felt louder. Every corner became a debate on television. Every City result made the title gap feel smaller. But here's the thing about this Arsenal story. The season didn't expose that they had no identity. It exposed how much of their identity had been physically taken away from them. And then, slowly, the players started coming back. Saka returned. The midfield options improved. Arteta found something with Lewis-Skelly that nobody saw coming. Arsenal stopped looking like a team in survival mode. They started looking scary again.
Arteta didn't fix Arsenal by making them louder. He fixed them by making them calmer. And that's the part that actually matters. Because after all the injuries, all the fatigue, all the set-piece discourse, and all the pressure City were applying, Arsenal didn't need a motivational speech. They needed control again. Better distances between the lines, players receiving on the half-turn, a midfield that didn't look like it was running through sand, and more than anything, they needed to become less predictable. That's where Myles Lewis-Skelly changed the feeling of the whole team. Against Fulham, Arsenal won 3-0. Gyökeres scored twice, Saka came back for his first league start since the Carabao Cup final and scored 2, and Arsenal moved 6 points clear at the top. But the result wasn't the real story. The real story was in midfield. Myles Lewis-Skelly made his first senior start in his natural central role, and the debate immediately became whether he should keep his place ahead of Zubimendi against Atlético. That's how well it went. One decision, different team. Here's the thing about the bad spell. Arsenal's midfield had started to feel stiff. Zubimendi is excellent at controlling zones, but he'd been carrying more minutes than anyone else in that squad, and it was showing. The sharpness was gone. Myles Lewis-Skelly gave Arsenal something different: quicker pressure, faster turning, more aggression when the ball broke loose. Thierry Henry said it best. He wasn't just good on the ball, he was reading danger, stopping attacks before they developed, going to receive in tight moments, and controlling the tempo without making a fuss about it. That matters, because Arsenal's whole structure is built on timing. When Myles Lewis-Skelly moved inside, he didn't just become another body in midfield, he helped Arsenal create overloads on the left. Calafari could hold a more natural defensive position, Rice could sit deeper and protect the centre properly. Ødegaard had more room to find pockets instead of constantly dropping to collect. And with Saka back on the right, suddenly the pitch looked big again.
Saka's performance against Fulham was the clearest sign. He assisted Gyökeres for the opener by beating Raul Jimenez, then scored Arsenal's second himself. Henry's red was simple. This was the Saka Arsenal had been missing. Brave, direct, willing to dribble, willing to go forward. Not the cautious, careful version the injury cloud had left behind. And with Gyökeres in form, that bravery had somewhere to go. His double against Fulham wasn't just about finishing, his presence changes the weight of Arsenal's attacks. He pins centre-backs, he attacks early crosses, he gives Saka, Trossard, Martinelli and Ødegaard a reference point. During the rough patch, too many Arsenal attacks felt like they needed to be perfect to work. With Gyökeres, they can be direct without becoming desperate. That's a huge difference. Then came Atlético Madrid. This is where the tactical switch stopped being interesting and became serious. In the Champions League semi-final second leg, Arteta started Rice and Lewis-Skelly together in midfield, Zubimendi on the bench, Calafiori at left-back, Saka, Eze, Trossard and Gyökeres in attack. Arsenal won 1-0, 2-1 on aggregate and reached their first Champions League final since 2006. The match wasn't pretty, it was tense, physical, uncomfortable, exactly what Atletico want it to be. Julian Alvarez had an early chance, Griezmann forced Raya into a save after half-time. Atletico pushed late, doing what Atletico do, but Arsenal didn't panic. They defended, they reset, and they kept just enough threat to stop Simeone's side turning the second half into a full siege. They made Atletico chase the game without letting them feel like they were chasing it. That's a very specific skill. The goal, just before half-time, said everything about what this version of Arsenal has become. Gyökeres linked play, picked out Trossard inside the box, Trossard forced Oblak into a save, and Saka reacted first to finish from close range. And that's why this version of Arsenal feels different. Earlier in the season, Arsenal looked exciting. Now they look experienced. Rice was the standout in that match. His positional awareness, his decision-making, his ability to connect defence and attack in moments where most players slow the game down. Carragher had made a similar point after Fulham. With Rice at the base, Arsenal had more dynamism because he got onto things faster and passed faster. He's not just protection, he's the engine that makes the whole thing breathe. Arteta didn't abandon Arsenal's identity, he rebalanced it. Lewis-Skelly gave them freshness, Rice gave them security, Saka gave them width, Gyökeres gave them penalty box gravity, Calafiori's return steadied the left side, Ødegaard stopped carrying every single creative responsibility alone. The ball moved faster, the central combinations got cleaner, the attack stopped looking like it was waiting for one perfect corner delivery to bail it out, and the win over Atletico extended Arsenal's unbeaten Champions League run to 14 matches, a new club record. For a side that hadn't been in a final since 2006, that number doesn't get said enough. But here's the real thing. The dangerous teams aren't the ones that avoid suffering. The dangerous teams are the ones that survive it and come out the other side with more solutions than they had going in. Arsenal have reached that stage. They're not just playing with momentum anymore, they're playing with proof.
Saka delivering, Joe Keres scoring, Rice controlling big matches, Lewis-Skelly giving the midfield a dimension it didn't have before, and City close enough to apply pressure but not close enough to control the race anymore, not after the 3-3 draw with Everton left Guardiola standing on the touchline admitting the title was no longer in City's hands.
Arsenal aren't chasing anymore, they're protecting something. 3 games left, West Ham away, Burnley at home, Crystal Palace away. The title is in their hands. City's 3-3 at Everton left Arsenal 5 points clear. Carragher said it even plainer. Beat West Ham and Arsenal effectively win the league. Now watch how people respond to that, because this is exactly when certain fans dust off the classic Arsenal vocabulary. Bottlers, mentality, too soft. And honestly, Arsenal have earned some of that over the years. They've led title races and faded. Beautiful football, empty trophy cabinets. Until silverware arrives, the question follows them everywhere. But football is about evidence, and this season the evidence says this Arsenal have grown. Think about everything they absorbed. Lost Saka, lost Ødegaard, lost the Carabao Cup final to City, got knocked out of the FA Cup by Southampton. Got mocked for relying on corners, had Arteta accused of faking injuries during international breaks. And after all of that, they're sitting in May with the league in their hands and a Champions League final in Budapest waiting. The Atletico game said everything. Arsenal didn't need a highlight reel, they needed to protect a lead, manage pressure, and survive the kind of suffocating match Simeone specifically designs to break teams. They won 1-0, kept a clean sheet, their 9th of the campaign, and reached their first Champions League final since 2006. They conceded just 4 goals across the entire league phase. You don't do that by accident. So the they lack mentality argument is getting harder to hold with a straight face. You can question the trophy cabinet, fair. You can say Arteta needs final proof, also fair. But last season they reached the semis, this season the final. European credibility isn't one magical night. It's coming back, going deeper, and surviving things that broke you before. The fixtures look manageable, but title races aren't played on paper. They're played in tired legs, nervous first touches, and moments where one mistake feels like it could turn the whole country on you. Arsenal don't need to convince anyone anymore. They need to close. And if they do, everything changes. Arteta isn't just an interesting coach. Saka isn't just a generational talent carrying hope. Rice isn't just an expensive signing awaiting justification. Saliba and Gabriel aren't just the best defensive partnership in England without a medal. They all become something more serious. A team that took everything the season threw at them and still got the job done. The team that started this season looked exciting enough to dominate. This version looks experienced enough to finish. And that's the scariest version of Arsenal there is.